السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. طلبة الأعزاء، سنستكمل إن شاء الله الحديث عن قواعد الوحدة الرابعة في كتاب الهدوي. So in the last session we were talking about the difference in meaning between have to and must, and this is the completion of our class of last session. So we were talking about have to and must, and we said that have to and must can be used interchangeably because sometimes they are used to talk about obligation. However, there is some sort of difference actually in meaning concerning obligation. I said that have to talks about an obligation which comes from outside. It means it is an obligation which is based on an authority of another person. This is number one. Or it is based on a law, it is based on a rule or something like that. However, must, in terms of obligation, when it comes to obligation, it talks about or it expresses the feelings or the wishes of the person. The wishes of the person. And that's why we need to be very careful when we talk about both of them. We have more examples actually here. Let's take an example. I must buy my mother a birthday. I must buy my mother a birthday present. Okay? So the speaker here says, I must buy my mother a birthday present. He feels that he must buy his mother a present. So this is his own feelings, which is totally different from the idea when we talk about must. Must is totally different. Must is totally different in terms of the type of obligation. The type of obligation in must is external. It is based on an authority of another person. It is based on a rule. It is based on another or something like law. So this is important to be taken into consideration. Okay? So what happens? This is the idea. This is the question we are going to ask. What happens if he doesn't buy nothing? Nothing happens actually. But let's take an example concerning must. Concerning have to. I have to get up early to catch the bus. To catch the bus. I have to get up early to catch the bus. The type of obligation here is different. It is based on an authority of another person. What happens if he doesn't get up early? There should be, or there is going to be some sort of punishment. I don't know where it comes from, but some sort of a punishment concerning the person. For example, if he doesn't get up early, he will miss the bus. He will be dismissed from work. He will blah, 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 blah. So the type of obligation is different. The type of obligation is different in both cases. This is done for have to and must. Let's go to the difference between don't have to and mustn't. Don't have to and mustn't. Now, the negative from have to is don't have to. The negative is don't have to. Don't have to expresses absence of obligation. It expresses absence of obligation. So don't have to expresses absence of obligation. We don't have obligation in this case. We don't have any kind of obligation. It expresses an absence of obligation. She doesn't have to wear a uniform in the school. Okay? She doesn't have to wear a uniform in the school. Doesn't have to. Okay? So we don't have obligation. It means what happens if she wears a uniform? Nothing. So this is not necessary. It means this is not necessary. This is not necessary. She doesn't have to wear a uniform in the school. It means it is not necessary. It is not necessary. So nothing happens if she can. If she wears a uniform, it's okay. Nothing will happen. Okay? So mustn't is very different. Mustn't is totally different. So we have to say here that don't have to and mustn't are totally different. Are totally different. So even we can say that the negative of mustn't is don't have to. So the negative of the negative of mustn't, negative also is don't have to. The negative of, the negative of must. The negative of must, I'm talking about must. I'm talking about must. The negative of must is don't have to. Is don't have to. What about must? Must is something else. Must is something else. Now, what about mustn't? Mustn't is important here because mustn't means you are not allowed. You are not allowed. It talks about a negative obligation. It talks about a negative obligation. It means it is important not to. It means it is important not to. It is important not to. It is important not to. So it means mustn't means we are not allowed, or it is not allowed. You are prohibited. You are forbidden. This is forbidden. This is prohibited. This is prohibited. So let's have more examples actually. You mustn't. You must not. You mustn't park your car in front of the hospital. It means you are not allowed. You mustn't. It means you are not allowed. You are not allowed. You are not allowed to park your car in front of the hospital. So mustn't means you are not allowed. This is forbidden. It is forbidden. It is prohibited, which is completely different or totally different from don't have to. Don't have to, it's okay. You don't have to get up early on Fridays. But what happens if you get up early? Nothing happens. So it is not necessary. It means it is not necessary. I don't have to. I don't have to get up early on Fridays. It means it is not necessary for me. It means it is not necessary for me to get up early on Fridays. Okay? What happens if I get up? Nothing. So you can get, it's okay. You can do something. You can do it, but it is not necessary. But it is not necessary. Okay? So mustn't means it is not allowed. In short, I can write it as a rule. Mustn't means it is not allowed, and don't have to means it is not necessary. It is not necessary. So in the exam, you might find some questions like you mustn't park your car here or your car in front of the hospital. Use allowed or not allowed or something like not allowed. And here, I don't have to get up early. Use necessary or not necessary. Okay, this type of questions. So let's go to another idea, which is can and be allowed to for permission. Can and be allowed to for permission. This is done actually. This is done concerning have to, must. Don't have to, the negative is don't have to, which is the absence of obligation, and must and mustn't. Must and mustn't. Must not is not the negative of must, because the negative of have to and must is the negative form for both of them is don't have to. However, mustn't is something else. Mustn't is something else, which is, completely different. Which is completely different. Let's talk about can and be allowed to. For permission, this is permission. Can and be allowed to, which is, I think, the opposite, which is the opposite. You are allowed to, you are not allowed to. Okay, so this is permission. This is permission. As we all know, that can is usually used to express ability. It is used to express ability, like concerning, in specific in the present. Like, I can walk 10 kilometers a day. I can walk 10 kilometers a day, okay? So can here is used to talk about or to express ability. But here we are going to talk about can as a way to express or as a way of expressing, permission and be allowed to. Can I go outside, please, doctor? Yes, you can. So this is permission. Also, we use may, we use different, we use could. Could, is more polite, it is more formal, it could be used in the present, it could be used in the future, okay? Could even can be used to talk about an ability in the past, but here we are more concerned with can and be allowed to. So can to talk about permission and be allowed to talk about permission. Be allowed to means are allowed to. I'm allowed to. I can leave at any time. I can leave at any time. Full stop. What is the meaning of can here? It means I'm permitted. I'm permitted. I have the permission to leave at any time. I can leave at any time. It means I am allowed to. I am allowed to leave at any time. So I can walk 10 kilometers, okay? So you can leave early today. You can leave early today. You can drive, or you can take my bicycle. You can drive my bicycle, but you can take my bicycle, but you can't take my car. Okay? So you can. You are permitted to take my bicycle. Okay? But you cannot take my car. You cannot take my car. It means you are allowed to. You are allowed to take my bicycle, but you cannot, but you are not allowed to. But you are not allowed to take my car. So this is the idea. You are allowed to, you are not allowed to. It should be followed, it should be preceded by verb to be. Okay, you are allowed to. I cannot say you allowed to. You are allowed to. She is allowed to. He is allowed to. They are allowed to. Okay? So we can use can to talk about permission or to give permission. You can leave if you would like. So I give you the permission to leave. Okay? You may leave. You may leave. So this is also, a way of expressing permission. You are allowed to go. They are allowed to go. He is allowed to go. So this is very important to be taken into consideration. Okay? Could can be used to give permission. Okay? So let's move to another idea, which is, giving advice. But in this time, we are going to talk in particular about must and should. Giving advice. Giving advice. We all know that for giving advice, we usually use should. Okay? We usually use should for giving advice. So I can say, you should eat less meat and bread as because you are putting on more weight. So this is a piece of advice I give to you. So this is my piece of advice to you. So should can be used to give an advice, okay? To give advice. So for giving advice, we use should. But at the same time, we can use must. And this is important. We can use must to give advice. But actually, the idea here is that must is stronger than should for giving advice. Again, must is stronger than should for giving advice. So I can say, your eyes are badly swollen. Full stop. You must see a doctor. You must see a doctor. If we notice here, if we have a look, we can notice that your eyes are badly swollen. You must see a doctor. So the idea is that we can use must to talk about or to give advice or a piece of advice, but must is stronger than should. Must is stronger than should. And we have come to the end of, the rules, or talking about the rules. Let's have examples on the blackboard, on the board, in order to illustrate what we have been talking about. Okay? I'm going to write more examples. Actually. So I have some examples. Number one, I don't get on well with my boss. I don't get on well with my boss. Okay? Do you think I should or I must look for another job? Do you think I should or must look for another job? Okay, so this is number one. So I need to choose from should or must. Should or must. Okay, so this is number two. We are giving Tom a surprise birthday party. We are giving Tom a surprise birthday party. Okay? You shouldn't or mustn't. You shouldn't or mustn't tell him about it. Tell him about it. Okay? Number three. Sorry. Please, Dad, please, Dad, okay? Can or must I go to Tom's party? Please, Dad, can or must I go to Tom's party? Okay? It will be great. Number four, you should or have to drive on the left in Britain. You should or have to drive on the left in Britain. In Britain. Okay? Number five, do you must or have to wear a uniform in your job? Wear a uniform in your job. 6, are you, can, or allowed to take mobile phones to school? Mobile phones to school. We are going to to do all these exercises together. Number 7, I must, I had to. I must or had to go to bed early. Go to bed early when I was a child. When I was a child. Number 8, you mustn't or don't have to go. You mustn't or don't have to go to England to learn English. You don't have to go to England to learn English. But it is a good idea. But it is a good idea. Okay, so let's do these examples together. Number 1, I don't get in well with my boss. Do you think I should or I must look for another job? So the answer is cut clear. Do you think I must? So we cannot say must. Do you think I should? So I'm trying to get an advice from somebody. I'm asking advice here. I'm asking advice. So I don't get on well with my boss. Do you think I should look for another job? So I'm asking for advice. We are giving Tom a surprise birthday party. So this is the second question. Okay, you shouldn't or you mustn't tell him about it. So here we are making or we are giving him a surprise birthday party. And that's why you mustn't. You are forbidden. You are not allowed. Okay, so you mustn't. You mustn't tell him about it. So this is not advice. This is not advice. It is prohibited. It is forbidden. It is forbidden. You are not allowed to tell him about it. Okay? Number 3, please, Dad, can or must I go to Tom's party? Can I? So he is asking his dad a permission to go somewhere. So please, Dad, can I go to Tom's party? Why? Because he is asking the permission from his dad. He is asking a permission. Okay? 4, you have to drive on the left in Britain. It is not advice. It is you have to. If you are in Britain, you have to. So this is an obligation. This is an obligation which is based on an external source, which is based on, an authority from another person. What happens if you don't drive on the left? You might have more accidents or many accidents, and this will, will hurt you. Okay? So this is done. Okay? So you have to drive on the left. So the obligation is not your own point of view. You are not expressing your wishes, your feelings. No, the obligation is external. The obligation is from an authority of another person. If you don't drive on the left, you are going to have accidents. You are going to die. You are going to blah, 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 blah. Okay? Do you must? Do you have to? Do you? Automatically, when we say do you have to wear a uniform in a job? We cannot say do you must. Okay? Are you can or are you allowed? It is are you allowed, because we cannot say are you can. No, we can say can you. Can you? So are you allowed to take a mobile phone or mobile phones to school? This is 6. 7, I must or I had to go to bed early when I was a child. So when I was a child, this is number 1. It is past. So I had to go to bed early when I was a child. Okay? So last but not least, you mustn't or you don't have to go to England to learn English, but it is a good idea. You mustn't. No, you don't have to. So this is not prohibited. We cannot say you mustn't. You don't have to. Why? Because you have other alternatives. You have many other alternatives. You can go to UK, you can go to America, you can go to, any other English-speaking country in order to learn English. So you don't have to go to England. You don't have to go to England, but it is in order to study English, but it is a good idea. And here we come to the end of our class. Let's call it a day. Thank you very much, our students. Wish you all the best. and bye-bye.